The 7th mission banner is located in the Florecent Canal. Once we get into position, we contact Eris for further details. Our goal is to reach the apothecary wing and retrieve a crystal shard. Eris goes on to explain the importance of said shard, along with placing events in the timeline with her next words. Before Savathun acquired the light, Mara had actually managed to capture the Witch Queen in a crystal cell. Or at least that's what appeared to have been true to us at the time. Of course, we know that Savathun escaped. The timeline is a little bit unclear to me, but this is what I think it currently is. First, Savathun obtained Osiris' ghost, and then was able to impersonate him. Savathun was then found out, but only after gaining the required knowledge she needed. After that, Mara captured Savathun, but she still managed to escape without revealing that she had stolen the light. How she managed to do so is unknown, but perhaps it was due to the light. If we read into an imprint left on a piece of the prison that trapped Savathun, perhaps we will learn if this was the case, or if not, more about what happened. If you were watching the gameplay in the background, continue to do so, but after spawning in, I somehow went in the wrong direction. It took me a moment to figure out where I actually needed to go, and corrected course. Eris repeats her dialogue as I head in the correct direction this time around. I don't really have anything to say about this happening, but I did want to point out that it did happen. I arrive at the alluring curtain, but bridges are slippery when wet, and thus sliding around causes me to fall off the edge. I'm gonna go ahead and blame Savathun for that one. We continue further and run into a group of hive under this gazebo-like structure. After killing the loosened sword bearer, we receive a hide sword relic. The way ahead is unclear as there are no platforms or pathways to take. Eris to seek out the aberrant paths, and using the relic sword, we destroy an odd-looking hive nest. We are now able to use deep sight to reveal the path ahead. Unfortunately, I have rather short arms and don't manage to grab onto the edge of the next platform, and thus I fall to my death right as Zavala calls us. Eris provides him with an update as Zavala wants to make sure we aren't running into any dead ends. This is where Eris mentions the Queen of the Reef. I assumed that this was Mara, and Zavala confirms that this is the case, but I don't think I've heard anyone use that title before now. I assume that the Reef is the name of the area that the Dreaming City and Tangled Shore exist in. In any case, this information clears up who Eris' trusted source was. She also ended up giving this information to Ikora before Zavala interrupted them. I've no doubt in my mind now that Ikora is up to something. She would probably not dare to not do anything when the situation is this dire. Zavala trusts Mara as a source, but is annoyed by the fact that she waited this long before informing us. Eris, on the other hand, understands that you need to keep the cords close to your chest, especially when dealing with someone as cunning as Savathun. This line by Zavala also informs me more on their relationship he and the Vanguard have with Mara. He trusts her information, but there's still a bit of frustration and tension attached to it. Thanks to the deep sight platforms, we were able to find ourselves halfway across the outside of the fortress. The Revenant Acolytes forced me to drop my Well of Radiance early, but after that I clear out the area with no more problems. I use another sword relic and destroy another nest in order to pick up some more deep sight. This is where Eris has a line that clears up a lot about deep sight and its nature. Savathun rebuilt her throne world after obtaining the light, but the remnant of what existed before lies just underneath this new coat of paint. Deep sight is allowing us to access the dark architecture. This is a much clearer definition of what is happening with deep sight than the looking into past explanation that was given to us previously. It also makes the whole thematic tie-in of deep sight much clearer, as one of the themes behind the darkness is that it helps us remember. I also just wanted to point out that the view of the palace from the outside as we jump across these platforms is quite stunning, and really helps sell the absolute scale of this place. Zavala accepts that we have to use the powers of darkness since the light isn't able to help, but is concerned about its consequences. Do the means justify the ends? As someone who wields the darkness, we've already accepted that it simply is another paracausal tool, but Zavala has a much greater attachment to the Traveler in the Light. He's the leader of the Vanguard and is the role model for every single Light-bearing Guardian. His position and complex relationship with the light makes his stance of still not trusting the darkness quite believable. We reach the next area and place down our first campaign banner. A walkable hive fountain acts as the centerpiece for this arena. I use the back half of it as cover while killing all the swarming hive. They all spawn in from directly in front of me, which makes this fairly simple in its approach, as I don't have to worry about any stray ads on my left or right, or behind me I guess. The lucid sword bearer tries to rush me down, but try is the operative word. The revenant ogre is the only other obstacle of note. After we kill it, we use the relic in order to clear the path forward. I will say that this mechanic is kind of undercooked. All it would take to make it more interesting is if there were multiple pathways, preferably secret pathways, that let you access some hidden chests. If they needed these sword relics, which only drop during certain sections, then there would be more of a reason for this mechanic to even exist. There are some more thralls inside this ritualistic room, but the light-bearing acolyte is the real threat. I tossed out a few solar nades and worked on clearing out the trash mobs. One of my nades did enough damage to kill the acolyte, but because I wasn't even trying to do so, I only noticed its ghost when it was too late. The acolyte respawned. Unfortunately, this is where my recording messed up the most, and thus I don't have the footage of me killing it the second time around. But I did do it, and it was not all that different or exciting because I had full heavy ammo. This ends the mission. I went ahead and grabbed a small bit of footage from Ebontis' Destiny 2 The Last Chance video, because there was some dialogue that I can discuss, so shout out to him. Eris congratulates us on our mastery of the darkness, and uses us as a point towards why Ikora proceeded with the actions she did. Zavala clarifies that he never doubted her call. He simply wished that she talked about it with everyone else at the very least. He's using the precedent set by Savathun and her taking over Osiris in order to support his point. Savathun excels at singling people out. As long as Ikora keeps us up to date on our plans, then we would be able to know how to respond appropriately. This is a fair enough point on his end, and it seems to come from a sense of worry. He doesn't want Ikora to fall into one of Savathun's plans and be by herself. Eris points out that technically, Ikora had us, the Guardian, and her, Eris, by her side, so she wasn't alone, but recognizes Zavala's point nonetheless. This finally brings us to the apothecary itself. We just have to breach it. A task much easier said than done. This begins the second encounter. In order to get past the gate, we have to disable the two locks that control it. I start off the fight by using my fire snap on the first troop of 3 acolytes. After that, I run back to some cover and activate my sun bracers. Behind that initial troop of ads is an elevated arched platform. On top of that, there's a major blizzard wizard that slows us down. After finishing it off, I drop underneath the arch. A lucent moth explodes, and a ball from a solar mortar causes me to retreat. Unfortunately, I get too excited and my burst jump collides with the edge, causing me to fall to my death. That's a great way to go. Again, much further in on my second attempt, but something even worse happened as I made my way to the second lock. For some reason, my game just freezes, the depth of which is indicated by a sudden burst of light overtaking the screen for a split second. I have no idea what caused this issue. My first thought was that it was my hard drive running out of space, but that couldn't have been the case because it was still recording. The weird flash of light kind of looked like a weird texture error, so my next thought was that might have been my GPU, but that generally crashes the game completely. The only other common error I could think of was that this was caused by a memory leak. I would like to know what caused this crash, but that's only satisfying my curiosity. The only thing I could really do was relaunch my game, but since I was getting close to running out of space on my hard drive, I moved around a bunch of files, and since I was going to take many hours, I decided to just go to bed. War never changes, and neither does Destiny 2, as it continues to jump scare me by just playing a cutscene as I'm logging into the game. Seriously, we have to get a better method of cutscene delivery than just spoiling everything to me as I'm logging in after having just woken up after a 6-hour nap. I'll save my thoughts on this for after I go through the Season of the Wish. In any case, after reset, I got back on track and checked the Eververse store ASAP. The astrologic shell was cute, and I was thinking about getting it, but to be honest, I'm far too lazy to be constantly switching out my ghost shells. The immaterial messenger was for an exotic bow, so I had to buy it even though I didn't own the weapon. I also went ahead and picked up the rest of the shaders because I just needed to expand my collection overall. Okay, now to actually get back on track. I traveled to the start of the mission in Savathun's fortress, and the game saved our progress, allowing us to start directly from the apothecary checkpoint. I hadn't run this encounter since the previous night, So it took me a couple of seconds to remember what my game plan was and how the encounter was structured. I activated some bracers and then fire snapped the initial acolyte troop after an awkward pause. My solar nades killed most of the enemies on top of the platform and regened enough energy for me to fire snap the enemies below the arch. I pushed up and used another solar nade to take care of the next troop of adds. I plopped down my Well of Radiance as I reached the next Revenant Wizard. This allowed me to tank the close quarter attacks from the Sword Bearer and the magical flurry from the Wizard. This drops the relic, but I don't pick it up because the Wizard's death causes the hive that we just killed behind us to respawn. I go back and re-kill the Acolytes and Wizard before picking up the relic. A Blizzard Knight spawned in underneath the arch, and I kill it with my Apex Predator. This causes the relic to respawn on its corpse. Using the relic, I break the hive gunk around a metal spike, and the quest tracker marks the lock as broken. I try to continue forward, but a large amount of adds have already spawned in, the most dangerous of which is the Revenant Ogre. I back up and take out the enemies one by one. I want to push up after killing the Ogre, but I see the Lightbearing Knight activate its super, so I run back behind cover. After taking care of the acolytes around the Knight, I push up next to it. The Knight tosses down a suppressor grenade, and that causes the situation to get a bit dicey. However, I am then able to just finish the Knight off. This begins phase 2, and we just have to repeat this process one more time for the second side. We just have less resources to accomplish that task this time around. I use a relic and break the second lock, which spawns in the second ogre wave. All I needed to do to take care of it was some simple jiggle peeking. Now the only enemies left are a wizard and a light-bearing knight, but that one is only because even though I finished off the knight earlier, I didn't finish the ghost. This one simple mistake ended up costing me the run because even though I'm directly behind cover, the suppressor grenade it tosses out lands directly at my feet. It's actually insane how much damage these things do. Like seriously, even my next death was caused by suppressor grenade. Death number 3 in round 2 was not caused by suppressor grenade, but instead by me walking backwards and off the platform. This is inarguably worse. I really should not have died the 4th time around, but the knight managed to hit me with 2 sentinel shields in a row while I'm midair and behind a bit of cover. Very cool. Death number 5 was because I didn't see the second Blistered Knight after one bum rushed me down. Hate to see it. Or rather not see it. Don't worry though, because I remembered that I needed to actually finish the ghost after killing the Light-Bearing Knight. This meant that the only enemy left in the end was a wizard that I took care of without much of an effort. This ends the second encounter. Overall, I would rate this encounter as one of the more difficult ones thus far. The fighting arena is literally just a straight line, and with enemies spawning in front of and behind you at several points, staying alive can be a bit challenging due to the lack of cover. With the wizard dead, we are able to enter the apothecary proper. This is where the hive carry out their experiments. The flasks of unknown material embossed into the walls only add to the creepy vibes of this area. Eris lets us know that one of Savathun's High Council wizards is in charge of this place. Our objective marker gives us some more details by informing us that this wizard is Savathun's right hand. There's a hive aberration that we need to destroy, and in order to do so, we need to acquire a relic. The objective marker tells us exactly where to go, and I think this is a little bit of a missed opportunity. Since we're crawling through the apothecary, it would be cool if we have multiple pathways we can explore in order to actually find the Lucent Swordbearer. In any case, we destroy the aberration and acquire deep sights. We then take the platforms that spiral up. Our ghost takes a better look at the jars and the walls and concludes that they contain tainted light. Eris realizes that these are the results of the experiments conducted by hive wizards. She uses this in order to support her position that corruption has more to do with the wielder than with the tool. Zavala still maintains his suspicious attitude and suggests that the darkness has simply corrupted their nature, turning them from prey to predator. Eris, being much more knowledgeable on the hive, actually pushes back on this. She says that this nature is not technically innate to the hive, and that an entity conditioned their power on an endless blood tide. I assume that this is referring to Savathun's worm and the worm gods of the deep that transformed the hive into the hive as we know them now. Zavala understands that we are special enough to be able to will the darkness, but his concern lies in those who do try to learn the darkness, but give in to temptation instead. To me, that just sounds like a skill issue. With the relic in hand, I clear the path forward and pick up the deep sight needed to continue our ascent. The platforms end and I enter a tunnel where the hive-like webbing has completely taken over. Eris lets us know that this is an inverted realm, so we should make sure to explore all of it. I have no idea what an inverted realm even is, but it sounds pretty epic. Nonetheless, we place down campaign banner 3. We find some hive on their knees, praying, trying to conduct some sort of ritual. I begin the fight by killing the hive. Savathun's right hand makes her appearance, and I make my way to the back of the room. I dropped my well here because this was a small room, where I could maintain line of sight with the wizard with some options for cover in order to break it. After knocking out a third of its health, the wizard flees. Some adds take its place, but we can only progress after killing the Lucent Swordbearer and Ogre. In the next room, some Revenant Knights stand guard. After knocking both of them out, Savathun's right hand reappears. She rushes directly at me after I take a few shots at her with Tikus. I run to the back of the room and drop my well instantly. The wizard wasn't that close, but it was close enough that I decided to just play it safe because its rapid solar burst attack could kill me almost instantly. This let me tank the flurry from the wizard, the bolts from the knight, and the explosions from the cursed thrall. So I'd say it worked out in the end. I knock out the rest of the second health bar with my apex predator. I clear the path forward. I have the meta knowledge that this wizard had 3 segments in its health, so this was the last encounter. Since I knew this, I decided to play it super safe, especially because I didn't have my Well of Radiance as a get out of jail free card. Only after poking Knight do I decide to pull out my rocket launcher. The Knight decides to activate its super the same moment I shot my first rocket, and thus the rocket completely misses. Even though I was reeling in pain, I maintained my calm and kept my second rocket right on target. Of course, the Knight decided to then sidestep this rocket entirely. The superfied Knight rushed me down and tossed its light empowered shields at me. This is where I made my movements as erratic as possible in order to mess up the tracking AI of the shields. Only one shield hit me and thus I managed to live, so that tactic was clearly a major success. I led my final rocket and managed to hit the Knight the 3rd time around. I was pretty low on special ammo, especially after missing the Knight a numerous amount of times, but I managed to poke it down with Tikus while constantly moving and dodging. Luckily, I turned around just in time to notice the hive ghost I forgot to finish off. This spared me having to kill it again and let me focus on Savathun's right hand. This fight commenced the same way as phase 1 and 2. Honestly, compared to the fight outside of the apothecary, this encounter has been pretty chill. All the enemies only spawning in front of me makes managing them a non-issue. Savathun's right hand pushes me after activating her super, but I also had mine. After a simple 1-2 combo with the Nox Perennial and Apex Predator, I disarmed the wizard and crushed her ghost. I collected my loot and picked up the crystal. From the initial imprint we hear Savathun say, "Devotion inspires bravery, bravery inspires sacrifice." Her voice trails off at the end of the phrase, "and sacrifice." Our ghost questions what that means, but Eris figures out that this was the piece of evidence we needed all along. Zavala tasks us with returning to the altar and confirming the memory contained within. This ends the 7th mission.